Hello and welcome to the Monday Agenda. Monday Agenda today is highly privileged to talk to Engineer Florence Mahai, who is the Basin Director for the Lake Victoria Basin Water Board. Mr. Mahai, Engineer Mahai, very welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
My viewers watching the Monday Agenda on Capital TV this evening would like to understand, before we go on to what really Lake Victoria Basin Water Board is and what the functions are, maybe take us through what integrated water resource management is, and then we can go on to the basin.
By definition, integrated water resource management is a concept where you involve land and water, because these two are interrelated. When you look at a river, water flowing in a river has information which has been generated in the land surface. So for you to manage the water resources in the river or lake, you need also to consider what is happening in the land. That's why this concept of integrated water resource management came into place, because there's a connection between what is happening, for instance, upstream and what is in the downstream. Because for instance, you live downstream of a river, you will be affected by things which are happening upstream. So for planning purposes, it's good to consider the whole system.
What kind of information are you receiving from the streams, from upstream?
Of course, we are dealing with water resources, and therefore in water resources there are a lot of issues which are enshrined in it, like pollution. In terms of water quality, there are issues which are happening upstream which are affecting the downstreamers, and that information is conveyed through the water systems. So the idea of integrated water resource management came as a solution to a holistic planning. And I'm very proud to say that this idea really originated in Tanzania, because in 1981, the Water Utilization Act of 1974 introduced a clause which said that now it is being decided that in Tanzania, water will be managed using hydrological units. Now, the concept of integrated water resource management, its application is being done at a hydrological unit, which is the basin. So in 1981, it was decided that Tanzania mainland will manage its water resources using these hydrological units called the basins. So that was introduced in the law in 1981. And then in 1989, the minister responsible for water resources gazetted the establishment of the 9 basins in Tanzania. So in Tanzania, there are 9 basins. We have Rufiji Basin, which is responsible for all the water resources in the Rufiji, and it's the largest. And then we have the internal drainage basin, it's the second largest. We have Lake Tanganyika Basin, the third largest. We have Lake Victoria Basin, and then we have Wamiruvu, we have Pangani, Lake Nyasa, Lake Rukwa, and Ruvuma in the southern coast. So these are the 9 basins of the of mainland Tanzania.
Okay, we'll get back to the basins. Just to understand, you are the director, the Basin Director for Lake Victoria Basin Water Board, and just tell us a little bit more about Lake Victoria Basin, and then we'll get to understand about a little bit more about other basins. But what is this Lake Victoria Basin? What are your mission, visions, where you are, where you come from, what are your, where are you going? Or probably we'll ask that towards the end of the program, but rather let's understand the Lake Victoria Water Basin.
Lake Victoria Basin Water Board. This is, as much as we have 9 basins, then we have corresponding 9 boards which manage the basins. So Lake Victoria Basin, Lake Victoria Basin was gazetted in 1989, as I said, but the board, as an institution to manage the water resources of the Lake Victoria Basin, was established in 2000.
Okay.
Yeah, so the board was established in 2000, and as an institution in 2000. And so as we talk today, it is 20 years since its establishment. Lake Victoria Basin is an area, its area is 115,000 square kilometers. It includes regions, Kagera region, whole of it, okay, and then part of Geita region, part of Shinyanga region, and then part of Mwanza region, the part of Simiyu region, and the whole of Mara region. So those are the. Now recently we discovered even Arusha is included. Arusha region is included. So there are those 7 regions which fall. Now someone will try to understand what is it we are talking about. Absolutely. We talked of hydrological boundaries. So what are they? A very simple definition is when it rains. When it rains, some runoff is being produced. Where does that runoff go? So that area where all its runoff ends into Lake Victoria, that whole area belongs to the Lake Victoria Basin.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the definition, and that's the coverage. So the board is being managed by board of directors. So there are 10 board of directors being headed by the chairperson, and me being the director of the management, then I am secretary to the board. Okay. So we have the 10 members, but then there's management. And then there are institutions below the board, which are the catchment water offices. And we have we have agreed that there will be 6 catchments in the whole Lake Victoria Basin. And then below them, there are the grassroots institutions, which are Water Users Association. Okay. So far, we have managed to form 15, but our target is to form 23. Okay. Yeah, so that's in a nutshell what Lake Victoria Basin is and Lake Victoria Basin Water Board is. Yes.
Lake Victoria is the second largest freshwater lake in the world. The first in Africa, second in the world. And being so, it attracts a lot of human activities. Name fishing, name, agriculture, and other economic activities where people just, enjoy the freshness of the water to earn income. Have these activities, human activities, which I believe, responding to this question, you will cite some examples, but have these human activities along the basin or on our Lake Victoria have any impact on that quality of water from the lake?
The board is being directed by the vision that we envision a basin where all water resources are well managed, they are in good situation so that they can save the ecosystems of the basin. So our vision is a well-managed, managed water resources of the basin for people and the ecosystem of the basin. And how do we want to reach there? Then we have a mission which is to promote integrated water resources management by involving the stakeholders of the basin so that we can reach that vision which we envision. And we have the 3 functions with which we will be able to reach that vision. And the functions are, we need to answer the question, how much water resources is there in the basin? And then we need to save our people by giving them access to using that water resources after we have known how much we have. And then the third, but very important, is to make sure that the water resources we have is here today and tomorrow. So sustainability. So we need to conserve the water sources, and we need to control pollution of the water sources. So with the first function, we are talking of the Lake Victoria as the second largest freshwater body on Earth and the first in Africa. So it is a enormous resource, but as we all know, it is shared by 3 countries. The lake belongs to 3 countries geographically, but the catchment area of the bigger Lake Victoria Basin belongs to 7 countries. So The lake touches 3 countries, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. 51% of the surface area of the lake is in Tanzania.
Okay.
Kenya has only 6%, and then the remaining belongs to Uganda.
About 43.
Yes,
Okay.
to Uganda. But then the bigger catchment is shared by 6 countries, including Rwanda and Burundi, and the 3 countries. The lake has an area of 68,000 square kilometers. As I said, 51% is in Tanzania. So we own the lion's share. And if there's pollution, if there is anything, then we are the biggest contributor.
Okay.
Area-wise. Although in terms of pollution, even Kenya, who owns only 6%, may have impact because there's no boundaries in the water board. The lake has a retention time of 23 years. What does that mean? It means if you put a pollutant today in the lake, and then it will take 23 years for natural processes to clean that pollutant.
Okay.
So that is a very special characteristic of lakes as compared to rivers. If you are dealing with a river, since a river is running water,
yeah,
if you pollute today, maybe after 3 years, the pollutant has gone.
Okay.
So there's a big care we need to take when we are managing the lake as compared to rivers. The volume which belongs to Tanzania is 1,499 kilometers cubed. So it's a big resource which is in us. And how much have we used so far? It's only 0.01%.
Okay.
So the potential is huge for people to come and use that resource for all the socio-economic activities.
Okay. Of recent past, the lake has been catering for water usage in the regions of Shinyanga, Tabora, and I understand there's a plan to go to Dodoma. Will that have any effect on the availability, on the quality, on the quantity of Lake Victoria water? Yeah.
Availability of the water resources in the lake is affected by 3 things. First, what's coming in. So we have 80% of what's coming in is coming from rainfall. Rainfall which falls on the lake itself, 80%.
Okay.
And climate change projections for the region has it that there won't be any changes in the rainfall. Okay. Overall, there will not be any changes. Only spatially, in one part they may be small, in the others, in other parts there may be bigger rainfall, but overall there won't be any changes. Therefore, we expect that we will not have any changes in the water levels of the lake. Why? Because rainfall will not change, and it contributes 80% of the inflow. The others is the rivers. So, and the biggest. So the rivers contribute 20% of the remaining, and out of this 20%, 75% is contributed by River Kagera.
Okay.
And according to the projections, in that region there will be more flooding because rainfall will be more. Okay. But on the other parts of like Simiyu and Mara, there will be less rainfall, according to the projections. Okay. So overall, there is not going to be any impact due to climate change. Okay. As regards the availability of water resources in the lake. Okay. Now, the third factor is the withdrawals, the use. So far, we have only used a total, from the lake, we have only used a total of 3.6 cubic meters per second. You know what's going out at Jinja? Between 500 cubic meters per second and 800. Okay. So these two are not comparable. Okay. And as I've said, you have only used 0.01%. So the potential is still very huge. Yes.
When you say we've only used so much, what has been our main component in the usage? What do we use this water mostly for?
58% of the usage has been for public water supply.
Oh,
for
domestic
domestic, for Mwanza, Bukoba, Musoma, Lamadi, Misungwi. So those projects.
Okay.
And also Kashwasa, yes.
The human activities along the basin, in the shores of Lake Victoria, have those any impact in terms of, you've mentioned pollution, it takes 23 years. Are these pollutants caused by human activities along the basin?
Yes. So far, the biggest problem in the lake has been eutrophication. Eutrophication means the water in the lake has a lot of nutrients which can favor fast growth of plants, aquatic plants, and sometimes even zooplanktons or algae. So that's the biggest problem which we have been facing, and everyone knows the story of water hyacinth. Mm-hmm. That's an example of the effects of having eutrophication and having a lot of nutrients. So where do these nutrients come from? They come from the catchments. Okay. Why? Because of unsustainable agriculture, grazing of cattle and other animals. Mm-hmm. But then there are these settlements around the lake. Previously, there were no systems. For instance, in the towns, there were no system for sanitation. As a result, most of the pollutants were entering directly. There are industries in the shorelines which were also just going indirectly into the lake. But after the presence of that Lake Victoria Environmental Management Project, Phase 1 and 2, considerable efforts have been done, and now regulation is, we are doing our job to make sure that all the industries, there are about 30 industries for fish processing, brewing, and things like that, to make sure that they have installed systems for purification of effluents before they go into the lake and the environment. They have to reach the standards before they go into the lake and environment. But then there were things which happened before these measures have been taken. Mm-hmm. So we have to wait until the 23 years, and then the natural purification process will happen. And so the future is good.
Just there. When you say we have to wait for another 23 years, what year are we in right now?
Now it depends on the start date. Those things did not start at one point. Uh-huh. So it depends on the investment. I mean, it depends on the pollution incident when they occurred. So it is not one single start time, and therefore not one single end time.
There's the policy in the country that prohibits activities near the water bodies, at least for the threshold of 60 meters. Who is enforcing that? Because if we land in Mwanza right now, you will literally see people 5 feet already are doing activities. You name them. Name agriculture, name, bringing the cows, the kettles for water. So who is to enforce this? Is this part of your board? Are you foreseeing these activities, prohibiting? Because this is life.
Yeah, you are talking of the Environmental Management Act of 2004. So many enforcers have, according to what they have been directed by the law. So for us, yes, the 60 meters is for us to enforce. Mm-hmm. But again, the basin is so big, so that's why when I was explaining the structure of the board, I said there are institutions below it. Okay. The lowest being the Water Users Association. Okay. So we work with those because those are in the field. We work with those to make sure that there is enforcement. But yes, I must admit that we are still very far, and we have a long way to go because of the sheer size of the basin.
You are watching the Monday Agenda, and we are looking onto the integrated water resource management in Tanzania, the case of Lake Victoria, and I'm highly privileged today to have a session with Engineer Florence Mahai, who is the Basin Director for Lake Victoria Basin Water Board. And Engineer, just to understand the aspect of being the second largest freshwater body in the world. Lake Victoria is enjoyed by 5 countries, which you've mentioned. The shoreline touches Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. And Tanzania has the lion's share, which is 51%. Uganda enjoys 43%, and Kenya enjoys 6%. We've also seen the impact on these countries or activities along the basin could also have an impact on other countries from these. But Tanzania, Uganda, not very sure about Kenya, have a lot of mining activities, have a lot of industrial activities along the basin. And some are large, so easy to manage and control in terms of stand measures, but others are petty miners. They call them small miners. And they use toxic materials, and these are hazardous for human consumption, for animal consumption, for fish. And most of Tanzanians like to enjoy fish from Lake Victoria because it's fresh water. What is the Basin statement or position on this?
Lake is being shared by those 5 countries, and under East African Community, the countries decided that they have to form an organ or an institution which will take care of the lake, because on one side you have the lake which has no boundaries, on the other side you have sovereign states with their own mandates, with their own laws, with their own policy. So they established this organization, Lake Victoria Basin Commission, to make sure that it has that coordination role. So some of the challenges, because these are 7 sovereign states, 5 sovereign states, is that you may have a piece of legislation in one country and you don't have the same in the other country. A good example is the use of water hyacinth. In Tanzania, it's not allowed to make any beneficial use of it. Mm-hmm. You just have to harvest it and then burn it so that it does not proliferate out of what you have harvested. But other countries have other approaches.
Yes. Kenya, for instance.
Kenya, they are allowed to make beneficial use of it by weaving or things like that.
Yes.
So that's an example where you need Lake Victoria Basin Commission to coordinate and have one approach so that you may have effect. Now coming to your question with regard to industrial and mining pollution. As I said, in the Tanzanian part, actually the basin has all the biggest mines in Tanzania. We have the Gigium, Geita Gold Mine, you have Bulyanhulu, you have Buzwagi, and then we have the North Mara. So there have been challenges, and there have been a lot of progress which have been made. Okay. Our job is to go and do the monitoring to make sure that the system does not pollute our surface waters and our groundwaters. So with that, we have managed. But now the issue of small-scale miners and medium-scale and small-scale miners is still a problem. But what we have done is recently we did an inventory of who is using what in the basin, and so we were able to identify 4,000 people who are using water, including small-scale miners and medium-scale miners. Of course, those large-scale miners are known. And what we are planning now is to work with them to make sure, for at least for the medium-scale miners, they have permanent systems in their place. So we need to work with other institutions like the ministry responsible for mining to make sure that they have sustainable systems which will address the issue of pollution. But then with the small scale miners, it's really challenging because it's difficult to manage them, because today they are here, tomorrow they are there. Yeah. So we are still considering how we'll work with them.
Is it in the mandate of your board to also look onto the issues of biodiversity? And especially the interest of, the species, the natural God-given species that are the basin.
With regard to aquatic ecosystems, because remember our area of jurisdiction is water. So with regards to aquatic ecosystems, we can do monitoring because they are an indication of the status of water quality. Yeah. So we use them, biomonitoring. We do biomonitoring of our aquatic systems as a means of establishing the status of the water quality of our systems. But then we can partner and collaborate with the other institutions for information exchange, because maybe the information you collect may also be useful to them, and maybe they may have some information which is useful to us. So we can work with Tafiri, for instance, in that one, but it's not our area of jurisdiction. We just work with them for information exchange.
A number of other regions that are closer to the Lake Victoria, region like Simiyu, it's pretty desert. Shinyanga, where I come from, it's pretty dry, and we have the water body right in front of us. Of course, there's a distribution from the lake, and there's an issue of resources. But when it reaches an extent that the water flow goes to, for instance, the capital, leaving the region that is nearby, Simiyu, Shinyanga, ensuring that they have water to their full potentials. Is there any advisory role that the Basin Board plays in advising the government on the optimum utilization of the water resources?
We are in a process of preparing something called the Integrated Water Resource Management and Development Plan.
Okay.
Now, that plan will give a roadmap of how the sectors are going to use the water resources. Mm-hmm. Now, the concept you are talking about is in another concept called the interbasin transfer, because now part of Shinyanga, most of Shinyanga is not in the Lake Victoria Basin.
Yes.
Dodoma is not in the Lake Victoria
Correct.
Basin. So that will be interbasin transfer. You take water from one basin into another basin. But yes, that's because that has already been done. The Kashwasa project, that took water from Mwanza in Lake Victoria, Sound Smith Bay, and then to Shinyanga, and now it has gone to Kahama, and now it's going to Igunga, Nzega, and eventually to Tabora. I think by March the project will be finished. So this time the government is embarking on a concept called national water grid. It's a concept whereby the government wants to use the huge water resources which we have in the country. I always talk of defining Tanzania being a land which is in between three freshwater bodies. Tanganyika, Lake Victoria, and Lake Nyasa. So we are endowed with these enormous water resources. So this concept of water grid is that you use these and try to save as many people as possible. So if this concept of taking water from Lake Victoria to other regions is implemented,
yes,
then it has to make sure that everybody is being saved along as the conveyance system passes. So nobody will be left behind.
We are on the fifth regime under His Excellency John Joseph Pombe Magufuli, and the regime is promoting Tanzania becoming a middle-income state come 2025 through industrialization. How is the Basin positioned to support this vision?
Our role as a board is to make sure that we have adequate water resources, and water resources being a catalyst for development activities, to make sure that we play that role. So yes, I want to call upon all the investors to come to the lake zone, because we have plenty water resources. Imagine we have only used 0.0% of the lake. So there's a lot of potential. So water resources will not be a hindrance for development and to attain this middle-income country.
And speaking while still at the industrialization and insufficient power sources that we have in the country, Uganda has advanced in terms of tapping the lake to produce hydroelectric power on the Jinja side. Don't we have the necessary the skills or potentials to actually be able to tap, so that at least the regions that surround the Lake Victoria can sustain themselves through hydroelectric power, maybe from Lake Victoria? Or do we already have operations from the lake to produce hydroelectric power, which again can finance can fuel industrialization?
Yes. Now Uganda are benefiting from their geographical location, because that's the outlet of the the outlet of the lake.
Okay.
So we don't have that advantage,
Okay.
but we have other advantages because we have rivers which are feeding into the lake, and one of them is the Kagera River, and I know there are plans to construct hydropower projects in Kagera. We have one at Rusumo Falls, which is shared by 3 countries, Burundi, Rwanda, and Tanzania, which is under construction already. And then there are plans for Kakono hydropower, which I think is still under development by TANESCO, not us. Yeah.
I also understand that the basin, the board, issues permits for activities in the basin. So can I just get up, leave Dar es Salaam, come to Mwanza and do acquire some permits and get into economic activities, or what processes are put in place to ensure there's smooth operation among entrepreneurs, among business community along the basin?
The law has put it that when you start up, after you have lodged in your application, then we give the procedure requires that we have 4 months, at least 4 months before you get the permit. Why? Because water is not a simple resource. Water is a resource which is very crucial for life. Everybody has the right to water, so you cannot just give it to anybody simply. So you have to follow that procedure, and the procedure is we will receive your application plus then application fee. After that, we will start our internal processes to make sure that once we have given you water, we are not causing problems to anybody else. So we will ask the regional, the district commissioner of the area where you are requesting to have that permit from, the district executive director, anybody who may be aggrieved by us giving you a permit, we'll ask it. And then we'll also go to the government gazette and announce your request, so that someone can, if there's anybody who wants to who wants to say, no, this guy is not a good person, if he used this water, it will not be good. So we are given, since we established that announcement in the government gazette, then there are 40 days to wait to receive comments, feedback. And then after that, but also we have an internal role of going to the site where you want to get the permit, to see if that water you are requesting for really exists, to do our balance calculation. And then after those 40 days have elapsed, we have received views, then we'll send it to the 10 members of the board in a board meeting, and it's them who makes that decision. Okay, this one can be given a permit, or this one cannot be given a permit.
Okay, you've mentioned fee, and initially you mentioned it's God-given. You can't impose much regulation on a God-given water body like Lake Victoria. Are the fees Tanzanian friendly, in the sense that can Tanzania, as a normal mwananchi, wants to actually either promote or support the industrialization drive, afford the fees?
The law has also put a process of setting the fees. They are not just being imposed. The stakeholders and the users have to be involved in setting up the fees. So there will be a dialogue in the stakeholders forum. Oh, this is too much, this is too little, but there are bases for the fees. You know, we are self-financing.
Okay.
So most of the activities we do to know how much we have to do the enforcement and also to conserve the water sources, these activities have to be financed internally.
Okay.
So that's why we have this fee structure. And recently the minister published regulations which guide how the basin water boards will charge the fees.
Okay.
And I want to call upon all the stakeholders to take note of the existence of this regulation. And for those who have been having permits, because the regulation, one of the requirements is that now when you get a permit, you have to make sure that you have a flow meter which measures how much you are using. Okay. So I want to call upon all those who have had a permit before the regulation. They have been given 2 years to make sure that they purchase and install flow meters, which will be at the exclusive use by the Basin Water Board, to make sure that they are using the right amount which have been permitted in their permits.
Lake Victoria Basin Water Board. Where do you see the basin, the board, and in terms of the activities, in terms of the mission and vision, reaching your objectives down the line, maybe let's say 5 years from today?
Yeah, we, as a board, we sat down in 2018.
Okay.
And then we had to review. As we were reaching the 20-year mark, we had to sit down and review, do an analysis, situation analysis of where we have come from, what have been our achievements, what have been our weaknesses, and therefore we have a new 5-year strategic plan, okay, which will end in 2024. Okay. And there we have 5 strategic objectives. And the first one is we want to have a board which is well functioning, mm-hmm, which has standards, which can be measured by even external. Okay. So we have some targets in that area. One of them is we have to be ICO accredited, okay, so that we see ourselves as doing the best, using the best practices of management. Okay. So we'll have quality management systems. And then the second objective is to make sure that we do our job professionally. Okay. So right now, and we have started, we are preparing the integrated water resource management and development plan. That's a roadmap. That's a roadmap of how we are going to do all our works, but why we want to make sure that we have enough water resources to meet the needs of the basin. So in that plan, there will be projects, there will be programs to make sure that there's sustainability in the water resources of the basin, so that they can continue to benefit the users now and in the future. And then there is an issue of awareness. Okay. What we do is not very much known to people. Yes. So we have to have a program to make sure that we reach out to as many people in our basin and as possible. And I'm proud and happy that today we are doing this. And because yes, this is one of the implementing that the strategic objective. Okay. But then there are other objectives which are general. For any government institution, you have to follow them, but like non-communicable diseases, gender, HIV, mm-hmm, so those have also been. So that's how we see ourselves in the next 5 years.
That is how the Lake Victoria Basin Water Board sees themselves in the next 5 years. And a call from the director, Engineer Florence Mahai, is that let the private sector, let you and me go down there, go to his office, bag him, get the permits, do some work, do some investment. Let's build industries, because the freshwater body, the second largest in the world and the first in Africa, Lake Victoria, is open to all of us to go and invest as we embrace on the industrialization drive. Thank you for watching the Monday Agenda. Engineer Mahai, thank you so much for being on the program.
It's my pleasure.
I wish you all the very best on the coming strategic year, the 5 years. And that marks the end of the Monday Agenda. Until next time, I'm your host, Austin Makani, and thank you for watching.